or not to leave. I knew that he wasn't going to come with me. He never does. But thank God I was thinking, okay, you know, sometimes when I did leave before, I just took it as a family recreation weekend, spend time with family, which was nice. But this time I wasn't going to leave because, I mean, yeah, they said it was big, but I was like, okay, they said several of them were going to be big before. We didn't take it that seriously until I heard them say, if you go into the attic, be sure to bring an axe. Now, I've lived there for 16 years. I've never heard them speak like that before. And I was like, honey, I'm leaving. You can come or stay. So we took the kids and the dog, and we left. But before we left, of course, a lot of our clients, they needed their houses taken care of. They needed to have their shutters. They wanted to make sure they were secure. They needed plywood put on their house. We had to come and get any of our tall ladders. I mean, it was just crazy the first few days before we left. And that's what we did, mainly, taking care of everybody else's house, and we completely forgot about our own.
Okay, so Abdulrahman, so you decided to stay. Kathy goes to Baton Rouge to be with her sister. So tell us, when the storm hits, can you describe what it was like when it hit your home at 11 o'clock that night on August 28th?
When it first hit, I started looking around the house. I saw things flying around like sheet of metal from industrial houses. A lot of trees falling down, heavy rain, roof flying, like a lot of roofs flying everywhere. And I still like try to be in a secure place. And I wait, and I started in my house, started leaking everywhere. And I started pour a bucket of water and a lot of containers to start dumping water outside. Up to the rain stop. And I mean, I'm very, very tired. I got sleep this night. No, before that, I take my canoe and make round circle. I saw the water almost like a couple feet in the street. And as the water going down, like being released to I got to sleep almost very late. And the first time in my life, I sleep late because, you know, the work I've been doing all night. And I hear wiggling under the house, the water like coming. Soon I look from the window and I see water coming, you know, in the city. I pick up the phone, I take my wife, because still the phone working. Say, you have to leave, go somewhere for the kids in school because we go be for a long time problem. And I start elevate my stuff from the house, the kids' school material, all electronic stuff, to second floor. After I finish with that, the water's getting rising up to the stop sign in the street. When the water stop rising, I take my canoe and I start go look around. And I saw some people need help, and I start helping needed.
You know, you tell a really good story about a woman that you helped.
Yeah, this is the one from the first help request I hear it, like, because the city very quiet this day. I mean, you can't hear anything because nobody moving. And I hear like somebody calling for help, and I start going closer to the house. With the water, most of the houses, because all the houses in New Orleans, most of them wood frames. And with the water all on the soil and no door, no window can be open. You have to kick indoors to get in. And when I broke the door, I got to see one old lady, almost like 85-year-old, and she's the water to her shoulder in her house. And like, I mean, first thing I see is my grandma there. And you know, this is a very sad story, I mean, to see this lady be forgotten in her house. Nobody know about her.
I think what surprised me the most about the day after Katrina, because for all of us who were watching it on TV, it was very chaotic. We saw looting at the Walmart, we saw pictures from the Superdome, but from your recollection, which I'm going to read a little excerpt of it right now. I was just amazed by how quiet it was and how it wasn't chaotic. Your Hurricane Katrina, it was just very quiet in your neighborhood. Dave Eggers writes, he paddled down Dart Street, the water flat and clear, and strangely, almost immediately, Zeitoun felt at peace. The damage to the neighborhood was extraordinary, but there was an odd calm in his heart. So much had been lost, but there was a stillness to the city that was almost hypnotic. He coasted away from his home, passing over bicycles and cars, their antennas scraping the bottom of his canoe. Every vehicle, old and new, was gone, unsalvageable. The numbers filled his head. There were hundreds of thousands of cars lost in the flood, maybe more. What would happen to them? Who would take them once the waters receded? In that hole, could they all be buried? Almost everyone he knew had left for a day or two, expecting a little damage. He passed by their homes, so many of which he painted and even helped build, calculating how much was lost inside. It made him sick, the anguish that would cause. No one he knew had prepared for this adequately at all. So could you just, it was just amazing how quiet it was. You could hear just dog barking and the animals.
The dogs started barking after most of them ran out of food and got, nighttime special. Around my house, and I hear the dog barking, and I start mark where's the dog, because it's nighttime, you don't want to go out for danger. Mark where the noise come from. In the morning, soon the light come out, start going to the house to see where. I have one house, and make me upset. I'm very much up to this moment, because when the lady come back, and I ask her why you have the dog in the cages, she said because the dog, if I without food, she said if I put food, the dog fight over it. Imagine somebody to leave the dog with the cage inside the cage without food because she worry about the dog fight over the food.
So Kathy, what kind of reports were you getting? Because I think at this point, were you able to contact each other during this point?
We were able to keep contact until September 6th. And I spoke with him in the morning, and he was supposed to call me again around 12 o'clock. We had certain times that we set up that he would call. And then he did his morning phone call, and then he didn't call anymore after that. And I watched as much of the news as my sister would allow me because I was a nervous wreck. Only because I didn't know the truth of the matter of what was going on. You did see the worst scenes that were in New Orleans, but it wasn't everywhere that those scenes were at. It was just in certain places. So when I didn't hear back from him, the first day I was like, okay, maybe the phone just went out. And then the second day I was like, okay, let's go to Red Cross and do a missing persons list just in case. And then you would hear how they were sending the military personnel in to take control back over the city because of all the things that we were hearing about the looters and the people shooting at the search and rescue workers. And I was really nervous about that. And I was nervous even when he was telling me about how, this is before we lost contact, how he was telling me he saw his first dead person on the street, which was really sad. And I asked him, was it anybody you knew? Because we know a lot of the people in New Orleans who've been there forever. And he was like, I couldn't look. So, which was, I wouldn't have looked either. I don't think my heart could handle it. But wasn't really as nervous at first until I couldn't get in touch with him, and then all these things were going through my head.
How were the kids holding up at this point?
Oh, they were playing with their cousins. They didn't care about it at this point. It was more like a vacation time for them.
So let's talk about September 6th. Can you go through what happened that day when the National Guard came to that house on Claiborne? If you could just go through.
Yeah, after my round, normal daily round, and I come back, stop to the house. Soon I walk in the house and I check the water, I see water around, and I take bath right away because it's been almost a week, never have a shower. And as soon as I got out, I have other guy with me. I said, go ahead before the water, And I come to the phone and start making phone calls. I'm talking to my brother, and I hear somebody outside talking to the guys with me. And I ask him, who is it? He said, somebody asked if you need the water. I said, we're okay because we have plenty of water in the house. Maybe somebody else needed more than us. And he keep talking to him. In a few seconds, I see 6 military guys with one lady with them, with a machine gun jump to the house. And soon I got out to talk to him. And he said, what you doing guys here? I said, this is my house. He said, give me your ID. I show him my driver license, and I have the address in the house next door to it. And he looked to it and he said, go to the boat. And the table I used to have make phone call on it, I have the note with the phone numbers where my wife's staying because only way to in touch with her because the cellular phone not work anymore. I asked him, can I have the piece of paper? He looked at me and said, no, go on the boat. Almost like 3 foot, 6 foot away from me. I tried to go get it and he's, you know, I put his gun ready. I said something serious. And I go to the boat. Me and the guys, the one from the tenant and one guy with me. We got to the boat, brought us to one location, have highland, St. Charles and Napoleon. Soon we got there. I have like maybe 10 military guys jumping us with handcuffed and, you know, like, I mean, something like you not see it in movie. And we pour us in van, closing vehicle. We stayed there and soon we inside. And we don't know what happened, what's going on. So what's going on? One from the guys sit behind the wheel. Only the answer he have, he said, we from Indiana, we doing our job. Okay, I say, okay. Brought us to a bus station, been designed like Guantanamo Bay, exactly, like a gauges, wire.
Camp Greyhound.
Yeah. So we got there and have very processing like high crime issues, you know, like they strip us naked and, you know, I mean, that's something like you do it for very dangerous criminal. Take us a few hours and put us in the gauge, separate gauge for just for us. They have other gauges for prisoners come from other, from different locations. Like 50 guys, 60 guys been transferred there, and we keep us by ourselves. We stayed there almost 3 days. No blanket. We have like where's a bus line up in the station with greasy floor. You know, when they went like to the bus every day, line up there, greasy floor. We can't touch the wire either because we have security with the dogs passing by.
So you couldn't touch the fence?
Not to touch fence, you have to stay in the center. Only thing I can relax my foot. I can't stay on the floor because of the grease. I have the pumper for the bus, like piece of pipe, like U-shape. I hang in it like a monkey, like to keep my weight off my foot a little bit. After 3 days, it transfers to the high maximum prison correctional in Baton Rouge. And from there, also prison separated prison also.
So they wouldn't allow you to make a phone call?
No phone call, nothing. No, we have also. I mean, when we in the prison, I mean, we get coming like Taliban or Bin Laden or like terrorists. We have like everybody from the security passing by, you know, like accuse us with some names.
Or they thought you were Taliban.
Yeah, something like that. And also he brought few government official like I think immigration or FBI. I mean, we have a few government people interview us there. And everybody come to us and say, we don't have nothing with them, just leave us alone and leave. Try to stick us with anything before, after that doesn't work, and use us with looting.
They accused you of looting.
Yeah. After all that.
What did he loot? He's in a canoe with one orc. I know because we lost the other one. So I was like, we couldn't find it anywhere. So I'm like, what's he gonna loot? He's in a little tiny canoe that wobbles when you step in it. So I said, I didn't buy it for a second.
In Baton Rouge, the president also never let us use any phone.
In Baton Rouge, they never let you use the phone either.
For 2
It
weeks.
was in St. Gabrielle.
Yeah.
So what was the reason behind it? What would they tell you? Just
The phone doesn't work. We know in other rooms when people using the phones.
What can I say? The fact of the matter was, he didn't have any of the regular rights that other people would have in prison because he wasn't their prisoner. He was just a name on a piece of paper, on a file, on somebody's desk. They weren't even in the computer. Even when we finally found out where he was by the prison guard calling us, my lawyer tried to locate him, and they couldn't locate him. He had a very hard time locating him because he wasn't in a system. They didn't have any rights. They were, I think FEMA was just paying per prisoner per day to keep them there. So they didn't have the right to food that they're allowed to eat. They didn't have the right to medication. They didn't have the right to phone calls. They had no rights whatsoever.
Because your foot was, something was wrong with your foot? Wasn't there, you were trying to get nursing help and they didn't even help you with that as well?
When I'm in New Orleans bus
Put your
station,
microphone.
I'm in the bus station, I have my foot have like swollen, and one doctor passing by, and I said, I want to show him to him. He said, I'm not doctor, just you keep walking. And after that, we have piece of Tabasco glass. I break it and I cut my foot open with it. And also I registered a couple times for see doctor when I go to Baton Rouge prison, and I never see doctor.
So Kathy, tell me how you found out that he was in the correctional facility.
Oh, at first the the missionary, the chaplains that they have that go and try to help the prisoners religiously. He spoke with my husband and he agreed, I guess, to call me, or he didn't agree. You didn't know that he called me.
No, I don't know. Just
Yeah,
I asked him, I ask anybody passing by to call my wife. Most of them say we can't do it. We can't do it, including the security guard or people working there or anybody. I try to somebody to let my wife. I'm still like.
So he was really sweet and he called me. But he says, look, I'm not supposed to call you. But I tried to keep him on the phone as long as I could, to ask him as many questions as I could. I was trying to hold him hostage, but it didn't work. So after his phone call, a few hours later, Homeland Security called me and told me where he was and what's happening. And he said he's been arrested for looting, and don't worry, the charges are going to be dropped. He's clean. We have no interest in him. We've never had any interest in him. And I was like, uh-huh. So somebody's been watching us. Which is okay, because that meant that they knew he was clean, so which is good. But that was how we found out.
So what steps did you take to get him out of the prison?
Well, my first response was, I got to go there, just like right away. But the problem was there's no flights going into New Orleans at this time. Also, there was no way that I could drive from Arizona to Baton Rouge. Again, I had a very hard time driving from Baton Rouge to Houston. My brother-in-law actually flew to Houston to drive me to Arizona, which was really sweet. But so I contacted the lawyer right away, and he had a hard time finding him because he wasn't in a system. He was just on a file. Finally, after a day or two of hardcore research, he found that it's absolutely true that he's there. So then we planned. Problem was, we couldn't get him out because there's no bail bond system set up. There's no legal system set up for them. There was no court system set up at all at this time. So the day that he got out, actually it was the day before that they finally set something up for the prisoners. And it was really tricky to get him out in the first place. We have a lot of rental property. We weren't allowed to use any of our rental property. We weren't allowed to use our home as collateral because I think they wanted the bond for looting at that time was like $75,000. Actually, it was more than that, but they dropped the price from $150,000 to like $75,000. And all they wanted was a commercial building. I guess they thought I didn't have one, but I did have one. I had a really nice one until Katrina hit it. But so I had my, at this time we flew. When we found out they were going to have getting the court system together, I flew to Baton Rouge finally, which was kind of weird. Not Baton Rouge, I'm sorry, New Orleans. They finally opened the airport in New Orleans. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen that Stephen King movie called The Langoliers, where they had that airport scene. That's exactly what it was like. It was really freaky. In fact, I think I got scared to death when the pilot was flying really, really low to the ground so we could see the damage after Katrina. I was like, oh my God, we're going to crash. I was here. The passenger next to me was like, no, it's okay. He just let you look. I was like, get me out of here. But anyway, stepping out of a Stephen King movie, my cousin-in-law picked us up and we went to an apartment that he just got. So they actually slept 2 weeks in their car with a pregnant woman who was like, I think 6 or 7 months pregnant at the time, and his parents who were like very old. They're senior citizens. I mean, I think they're in their 70s. So poor them, they had no place to go, so they slept in a car. So at this time, we were fortunate that he did get a little apartment that he was staying in. So he picked me up, and then we went to his house with his family, and the next day we went to the makeshift court, I guess, whatever it was. There was like a little room in Baton Rouge, in the Baton Rouge courthouse that we went to. And that's when they said we'd have to put up a building. So then we had to drive back to New Orleans, rig up some kind of ladder because all they had was like a broken one there. So my cousin actually rigged a ladder and climbed up through the second-story window because we couldn't get the door open because it was so swollen. And then he had to squish his way down the stairs to open it because all the ceiling had fallen. So it's kind of like walking on Jello, I guess, would be the best way to describe it. It was kind of nasty. But we had to go in there. The office was completely destroyed. All the ceiling was down. Some of the hanging lights were just like floating around. I had to, it's gross because I don't like bugs. So if you imagine opening up these multi-filing cabinets and digging through there trying to find the titles for the office building. It was nasty, and all these bugs would climb all over our hands, and I would scream and scare them because they thought somebody was coming after me. But it was okay. We got it, and then we went to the courthouse, put the office up, and got him out. But the day he was supposed to get out, that day, I guess they're like really slow in processing, so they didn't actually let him out until the next day, which was I think late in the afternoon. And then from there we went, let him shower, she smelled, and offense, but I mean he had like 6 guys in one cell and one bed. I mean, he's like, I'm not gonna, I wouldn't take a shower like that myself. But so then after that we took him to the hospital because I found out from the lawyer that he had actually had a torn ligament in his side. I don't know if it's from helping the pastor that was in a wheelchair get into the boat that the other guy came and helped him with. But anyway, he hurt himself and they wouldn't give him medical treatment. And my husband doesn't complain when he hurts himself. He's like one of these, I'll tough it out until it's better kind of guys. But for him to complain about it, I mean, it was pretty serious. So we did take him to the hospital, and they said they had a torn ligament or muscle or whatever in his side. Thank God I've never had one, so I don't know how that feels. But anyway, that's how it happened.
So how did he look when you first saw him? Because you hadn't spoken to him at this point.
No, I hadn't spoken to him in 23 days, and he looked pathetic. He looked shorter. He looked so skinny. He looked older. Looked like an old pawpaw. It's okay. But you can see we chunked him up again. So he's okay now.
You gotta love Kathy. So let's talk about the book. So how did Dave Eggers find your story? How did this all come about?
Oh, I was angry. We had one of our, and I was willing to tell anybody who would listen, which actually that was kind of hard because then I was nervous to talk about it because, I mean, who wants to hear about a Middle Eastern man going to jail after 9/11? You know, our reputation is at stake. They're going to think my husband was really a terrorist, especially if you tell them, oh, yeah, they arrested my husband for terrorism, and then, you know, they switched it to looting when they didn't have anything on him to stick for terrorism, which was great, again. But I had one of our clients who we've been doing work for I think like 12, 13 years at this time, Lewis Corner, he called, and he wanted to be one of the first ones on the list to get his house started. He had this great big old home in the Garden District. And so because I felt so comfortable with him, I told him everything. And I was just like, I want you to take care of it. And I just want them to pay for what they did. I want them to, you know, I thought it was revenge that I wanted, but it wasn't revenge. It was justice. You know, it was like, because it was totally unfair. Not just for my husband, but for all the other people that suffered there. Like I had that guy who had the Down syndrome who would only say, be nice to your mom, don't play with fire. And he would touch your friends. You know, they tied him up and pepper sprayed him, and then they washed him with a fire hose. I mean, where's our common sense? You know, where's our mercy? I mean, this is a mentally retarded guy, and this is how cruel the situation was. He's definitely not, you know, somebody who I think they would have to worry about violence if all he's doing is walking around saying, be nice to your mom, don't play with fire, repeatedly. Okay, yeah, maybe that would get on people's nerves after a couple of days, but still, it wasn't worth the pepper spray. But, so I told him everything, and he's like, Kathy, what I want you to do, and he couldn't believe it. Anyway, he was shocked himself when he heard about it. And he was like, I can't believe this, Kathy. Okay, you know, we'll do whatever we can do. I want you to put it down on paper, like a journal, starting from day one up until the day he got out of jail. He said, no matter how insignificant, just put it down. So I did what he would give me, and it was really hard getting information from him because he was so ashamed. It's like having, you know, we're in a white suit and then you spill coffee all over it and then you have to go to an important meeting or something. You're going to be embarrassed in this. You know, it was like a stain on his soul. He was really humiliated. And he suffered great depression from it, I'll tell you that. And it was really hard between us at this time because he was so angry and so disappointed. And I guess we just never pictured or imagined that discrimination would hit him this hard. You know, but, you know, things happen and you move on. But Anyway, we did this, and we had another client that we were doing work for, Emil Dumas-Neal, and he was a good client of ours too. And I mentioned it to him. I think he was like the second or third person I mentioned to, and my husband was like, don't tell anybody, don't tell anybody. And I'm like, no, I'm going to tell somebody. I'm angry. So, and I mean, we couldn't talk about it because we would only argue about it. So I was like, I'm going to tell somebody. I don't care. So I told Emil Dumas-Neal, and he's like, he mentioned it to my husband. He's like, just talk to Kathy. She wrote it for the lawyer. She'll just send you a copy. This was his ploy. He didn't want to talk about it with anybody. So I sent it to him, and then I guess he wanted to talk about it because he sent it to the newspapers. And then next thing I know, somebody called me. He's like, Kathy, did you see the paper? I'm like, no, we don't get the paper. You know, Katrina, we don't even get mail. So she's like, pull it up online, which I did. So we did have internet service at this time. Thank God Cox was working overtime. But I pulled it up, and I was like, oh, my God. And then my husband was like, Kathy, what'd you do? I'm like, I didn't do it. So it wasn't me. And then the whole argument started all over again, because then he was like, no, everybody's going to know, you know. And I was like, so what if they know you were innocent? It's okay. Things are going to be fine. And, you know, let them know how bad things were. And I think that's, and I did want people to know how bad things were, because it was bad. I wasn't going to let them cover this up. And so another person called us, and what was his name, Chris Yang or something, and they told us they were doing a book on Voices of the Storm, where they had people who were incarcerated, innocent people who were incarcerated because of the storm, and they took the article from the newspaper and they put it in the book. They just wanted to let us know that they did that. And I was like, okay, you already did, no big deal. Okay, so then we got another phone call from somebody who, this was like a few months between, who put the story in the book, another book, I think it was called Natural Disasters, and that one actually went for universities, and his story in Big Belly was in that one too. But, and then Dave called us about a year later, and he was like, well, I would like to meet with you and talk with you. I think there's more to the story than just what's on that page. And at first we were really nervous. I was like, okay, somebody's coming to get revenge on you for telling. And I was like, you told. I was like, honey, they're after you. So I was like stepping out of that one too. I was like, I didn't do it, he did. You know, but Dave came and he met with us, and he, you know, he's just got like a very therapeutic behavior, and his speech is very calming and relaxing, and he can get you to talk about things that you wouldn't really normally talk about. And he got my husband to tell him things that he wouldn't tell me, I guess because he was worried about my reaction, which was a good thing, because after I read about it, after other people read about it first or heard about it first, I was furious. So, which is, you know, I was like, this really happened? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, huh, and you're going to put that in the book? He's like, it happened, you know. So I'm like, well, I wouldn't mention that. But, you know, like the little, I guess, what they do to people when they strip them and stuff like that. That was a huge violation, and that took a long time to get over. I don't think I'm still over that, but it's okay, you know. We go on. So Dave talked with us for like 3 years. He went to Syria, he went to Spain. He wanted to make sure that my husband was who he said he was, I guess, to make sure his stories were all accurate, and it was, of course. So that's how it got to Dave.
That's great. So what do you hope that people will get out of your story, out of this story?
A, don't be so judgmental. You know, you can't blame a whole group of people for what some stupid people do. And I think the best way to stop some of that anger is through education. You know, I think education, lack of education brings anger. Anger breeds hatred, and hatred brings stupidity. And there was just a lot of it going around in New Orleans at that time. So I think if we can change the ideas of just one family about how Muslims really are, because, I mean, believe me, they're not like what you see about on television. I went overseas, and I was totally surprised myself. I had the same clothes mentality, like, oh, my God, everybody's going to be wearing a scarf and then a cob and these black dresses, and it was totally not like that. I mean, if you saw them over there, you would swear that they were American. They have MTV. So, like I said. But, so, I mean, it opened my eyes to the truth about how some of the things are that are overseas. A little do I know still, but still, it wasn't as what I expected. I was really surprised. So, I mean, change the ideas. Not all Muslims are terrorists. Yeah, you have good and bad in every religion, you know, but unfortunately, some bad stick out more than the good. And there's, what, about 2 billion Muslims in the world, and I mean, only a handful are bad, so that should say something. If we were all terrorists, I mean, there wouldn't be a world left. I mean, come on, people. Believe me, that's a lot of damage.
So why did you decide to go back to New Orleans, decide to rebuild there?
It's home. We made a home there. We're established there. I mean, it took a long time to get established, especially being a minority, you know, as a foreigner and as a Muslim. I mean, it's hard to get people, you know, to trust you and build a great rapport with you. We have that. I mean, and that's another thing. I was like, he's looting. We have keys to the homes and garden district houses. There's big garden district. We have keys. He's not going to go loot in a canoe. He's going to take his car over there and use the key and come in. I mean, so it's like it was totally ludicrous that they would even put looting on his thing, considering our reputation. And I mean, we're not exactly poor people. I mean, if I want something, I can go out and buy it, and I'll buy it at discount too. So.
And she won't open the box. Just so you know.
SamsClub.com. Don't auction against me though.
So how is New Orleans today? What work needs to be done still today from Katrina?
Oh, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. I think the upper classes got their houses, their neighborhoods got fixed really good. Ours, you know, we're in an upper middle class neighborhood and it's fixed right away. There's only 4 lanes of traffic separating our upper middle class neighborhood, which is a really nice, fancy neighborhood, to the poverty neighborhoods. And they're still not touched. I mean, you hear gunshots over there all the time, and I'm like, oh my God, I have 911 on speed dial. They don't come. One time I called because you hear like machine guns from over there. I actually called 911. This is like around 1 o'clock at night. I thought one of my kids were falling down the stairs. So out of a deep sleep, I jump up and I start running down the stairs. I was like, kids aren't here. So then I listened and I was like, it's just across the street. Otherwise, I wouldn't care. You know, it's like if out of sight, out of mind, you don't hear it. You could turn your back on some of it. But so then I called 911. I was like, they're shooting guns. You got to come. And they're like, okay, ma'am, someone's on the way. I waited 15 minutes. Nobody came. I called back again. I'm like, nobody's here. You know, I waited another 30 minutes to an hour. I was like, they don't care. I'm going back to bed. As long as they don't shoot my house, I'll be okay. But it wasn't okay. I was so angry I couldn't sleep. I got up in the morning and I called the FBI and I called the CIA and I was like, nobody's coming in there. Their excuse was, well, ma'am, there's organized crime. And I was like, well, I'm sure if I would have told you there was a foreigner over there, it looked Middle Eastern, they would have been here right away. And they were like, well, ma'am, that's not true. You want to bet? Don't tell me. So it's still, those houses are not fixed. They're still have their little orange, neon orange and green X's all over them. The people are squatting in those houses. They don't care. It's a poor poverty area. They don't care. It's not worth fixing up, I guess, they think. But we do care. I mean, even behind our house, as nice as our neighborhood is, there's like a building where the walls have completely fallen down. You can see the toilets inside. And they just leave it there. They're not doing anything for the lower poverty areas. They're not doing anything. And I think the only reason the 9th Ward is getting fixed up is because Brad Pitt is there. Sad. He should come over by our neighborhood. It is very true. It's a sad, sad truth.
Well, we're going to open up for questions, if anybody would. Oh, wait, one more thing. The Zeitoun Foundation, this is great, that has come out of this book, your foundation. What work are you doing with the foundation? This is a great thing, a beautiful thing that came out of such a horrific experience.
Yeah, this was actually Dave's idea, and we totally loved it. He's such a generous guy. You know, he's like so charitable and so compassionate about what he does. And he was like, you know, Kathy, you know, there's 2 ways you could do this. He says, either you can earn this money and pay it to the government, or you can use this money for charity and help people. So I was like, that was a given. So we did the charitable thing. And the good thing is, like, all the proceeds from the book go back into help rebuilding the city. And it's kind of sweet because other people from other states, they come to our state and they just do volunteer work. We've met with so many groups of kids and people, you know, high schoolers, they come with these groups of people and they just come to rebuild their time to help rebuild the city. I mean, we've seen them even across the street. We had one house on State Street Drive, and they were working over there. It's Rebuilding Together or the Greenhouse Project. All these companies, they just come to volunteer their time, and time is very valuable. I mean, if you've got a little of it, you know how valuable it is, especially with kids and 2 businesses. I have no time. But if they can do that for our city, I mean, we should be able to do more than that too.
So what kind of organizations do you support with your foundation?
We celebrate, not celebrate, we support several of them. I think the main two that stick out the most is the Rebuilding Together and the Greenhouse Project or the Green Project. We've donated to the Red Cross. We've donated to the emergency services, to the firemen. They're donating to several other organizations there. And we hope to put some more on the list, especially to those who keep coming back to the city volunteering their time. They've started their own organizations just to help for New Orleans. So we plan on putting them on the list too.
That's great. Okay, so I guess we'll open up for questions if anyone has any questions. Anyone? Oh, right there in the back. Wait for the mic.
Did anyone ever apologize to you after the fact? After, like anybody in the authority apologize?
In our city, no. But I do get a lot of phone calls and letters from people apologizing. I'm like, don't apologize, it's not your fault. You know, I try to look positive at every situation. There's good and bad. You can always find some good, you know, if you really look hard for it. That comes from bad situations. A, it was exposed what was going on to the people in New Orleans, and B, it was able to help people through the book. It was able to help the city of New Orleans. But we've been awarded certificates from members of Congress. We've been awarded a certificate, I think, from, I keep saying Moriel, but it's Nagin, but we didn't see him. He just had somebody else come and say thank you, but there's no apologies. And we don't need an apology. We just need action. And I think the best form of action is getting our city back in shape.
Anyone else? Oh, there's one. Just wait for the mic.
I mean, a lot of us were able to see some of the media coverage of what happened in New Orleans during and immediately after Katrina. I was there myself. What did you think about the media's portrayal of what was going on? Do you think that it was accurate, or do you think it misrepresented to some extent what was going on?
I think most of it was accurate because they had video of it. I think some of the reports that the media received was maybe over-exaggerated. I mean, I myself, I called the media. I called CNN. That was one of the first people I called when I was trying to find out where the courthouse was, and they wouldn't tell me. And I couldn't talk to him, and I couldn't visit him because I tried. Wouldn't find out where he was in jail, you know. And we were supposed to go to court. Raleigh told me, Kathy, get some people who can testify to his behavior or his personality, and I did. And then when I didn't get the courthouse address, he never gave it to me. And I remember calling him back and asking him, he said he's got to find it. But I was impatient, so I kept calling, I think, the city in Baton Rouge to find out where the courthouse was going to be. And they were like, ma'am, that's private. And I was like, and I'm holding on by a thin thread here. And I was like, well, you know, I'm trying to talk reason to her. I'm like, if it's private, how are people going to pay their tickets? Well, ma'am, you know, that information's private. I'm like, but it's a courthouse. It's not private. So I found myself getting impatient, so I was like, okay, I'll hang up and I'll call somebody else. I was like, okay, thank you. So then I called right back. And I was thinking I was going to get somebody else. I didn't. Wasn't fortunate enough. So then I was like kind of putting pressure on her. I was like, but I need to go to the courthouse. I need to find out, you know, to bring people to my husband, you know, for his defense. So, well, ma'am, I can't give you that information. So I was like, okay, thank you. So then I hung up. And on my third time, I was like, that's it. I'm going to try to get somebody else. So then I called back again. And this time, I think she was so frustrated with me, she got her supervisor. And again, I couldn't get no answers whatsoever. So I was so upset. And I think I wailed like a baby. I've never cried so hard in my entire life. I felt so helpless, and I felt, not that I was helpless, like, how can I get to him? I mean, if they're telling me to get people to come and testify in his behalf, on his personality, and his, you know, what we have and what we've done, and then there's no courthouse that we can go to, how am I going to do that? So these people came from all these other places for nothing. So I called CNN right away, and I was like, look, they're holding these people in prison. They're not letting them out. They're not giving court addresses. And they followed up on it, to believe it or not, which I didn't think they were. But they did. I think a few days after that, I saw them with that Kimberly Butler Baker woman, or whatever she is. And she was just lying through her teeth. Oh, yes, all of our prisoners, we have a bail bond system set up, and we have this and that. I was like, oh, my God, I think I threw a shoe at the TV. It's only because it was in reach. I think I would have threw my coffee if I would have had one. But no, but they did another follow-up like a month later, and they busted her in the lie. So I was like, yes, yes. It's like there's justice. So that's what happened.
So is there anything that Dave left out of the book that you wish that was in there, or anything that you wish that was left out? Was there anything?
No, I think it says it all. I mean, I think it portrays our family very accurately. You know, and in fact, I made sure, because I was like, edit this, edit this. You know, I mean, it's our reputation and our name. We have a huge name in New Orleans, and we have a very huge reputation. Everything had to be accurate 100%, or I was like, take it out. No exaggeration, no over-exaggeration, no under-exaggeration. But he's a romantic. I know he tried to make us seem more mushy than we are, but I was like, no, 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 we're not mushy. Take that out. But that was it. He was very accurate with it. That's good.
Any other questions?
Thank you. I lived briefly in Louisiana back in the 60s, and I think New Orleans is truly one of the great American cities. But I also had the impression that it was a little corrupt and run sort of like a crazy fire drill. And
It's
I'm
a
wondering,
lot of corrupt.
so that would definitely, you think, be part of the problem with what happened after Katrina. It's not all the natural disaster.
I think so too. You know, I had to, being an American and also being an American Muslim, I had to really think hard about where I could put the blame. And I was like, you know, it's not, I don't blame our military men at all. I mean, they were told to do something and they had to do it. I mean, they have to. But I do blame the people who over-exaggerated the situations to them, some of the situations to them. And I think that instead of having this great big, let's see how many people we can catch and put them in this chicken cage, which is what I call it, they should have been more focused on search and rescue.
What will happen when the next hurricane comes? Is the city better prepared so this won't happen again to them?
I hope they'll be better prepared, and I think they are. Like last year, I think it was 2008, we had Gustav. We didn't leave. He wasn't leaving, and I'm not leaving him again. So we suffered through the heat, and then I complained the entire time to punish him for not leaving. And I did complain, really loud. But they did much better. They made everybody leave, and whoever didn't leave, they were like kind of under a house arrest thing, because they kept repeating on the television, if you go outside, we catch you in the street, we're going to arrest you right away. And they knew that we were staying behind, because thank God we own this house and this house. So actually we own this one and this one, but we would go back and forth from this one and this one. So they didn't arrest us for going outside, going back and forth, because we had the generator at this house, and but we still used this house because it had the gas, and I think we had just like electric burner in this house because they were still working on it. So we would go back and forth to food. But the police, you would see them like 2 or 3, 4 times a day driving up and down our street just to make sure that we weren't out going in other neighborhoods, I guess.
We're back there.
I'm sorry, I may have missed this already. I missed the very beginning of it, but I'm not quite sure I understand who exactly was behind, what part of the government was establishing the prison?
I have no idea till now.
Local, it wasn't a local.
Some of it was local and some of it was from out of state. I think they brought prisoners in from different places to come and help with the chicken cage. I mean, get this, they brought the day, I think it was like the day after or whatever. When did you find out?
Already have large machines, big trucks, and coming to build the prison. And people need water over there, need help other places. And this guy basically built them prison.
Yeah,
I mean, was it like the FBI or?
No, I think I have some contract with other out-state prison. I think from.
We don't know all the details of that.
From Mississippi.
But didn't they refer to you in the book? It was FEMA's problem, or you're a FEMA prisoner, or?
Yeah, you know, I know that when he was in jail, it was like FEMA was paying them to be there. But I don't know if FEMA is the one who set up this prison arrangement. I just know that FEMA was paying them to be there.
Angola prison, call it Angola prison.
Yeah, it was Angola prison, and then I think another prison as well, that were coming in to help build these chicken cages or whatever they were doing.
And have all kind of model machinery you can imagine, you know, first days. I mean, I saw all kind of machine, lifters, crane, big trucks, all kind of machine there.
I do believe if they would have focused on getting the people out of downtown, there wouldn't have been as many burglaries that happened downtown. Like they would show on the media how these guys were like, okay, I know it's not nice to say, but they look like a bunch of animals jumping on a fence trying to open up the Macy's doors. But I mean, there you go again with the corruption in the city, where it was actually the policemen who were robbing from Macy's as well. So a lot of the policemen were just as corrupt as some of the criminals that were out there. So I guess that's why a lot of it was let go.
I had one more question right up front.
This is a question for you, Mr. Zeitoun. One of my favorite parts about the book were the stories about your childhood in Syria, growing up in Syria, and you came from a family of fishermen. And there was a story in there about you going fishing with your uncle for sardines. Could you tell that story about how they fished for sardines on the moonless night?
Yes, we have like a very hot summer time. Most the sardine come into the Mediterranean Sea because they have warm water like Gulf of Mexico, similarity, because the water gets very warm and sardine like it. When we have the darkness, not moon show up, we send boat with the light, and the boat with the nets stay on the side, wait for the sardine to come to the light. As soon as the sardine comes to the light, the boat give a signal to come to surround it with the large fishing net, like almost talking about like close to 500 linear foot and like 60 to 70 foot deep. We have a lid in the bottom and a floor on the top. We drop the net down around the boat with the sardine, and we close in it. And every time we take a couple, 2-3 ton sardines at a time. Yes, but it's like very hard work, and this like the old-fashioned way. I think now have very modern machinery to do that. And we used to do it like by hand, like.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. If anybody has any other additional questions? Anyone? Well, thank you so much for coming out today to our Severe Weather Wednesdays. This has been such a great success for us, and our last installment is in 2 weeks, and it's going to actually be Eric Overmyer, who's the writer and co-creator of Treme, which is an HBO show about post-Katrina. So we hope you join us for that. That actually will be moved to 6 p.m. Here in the Commons in 2 weeks. So just check out the website, clintonpresidentialcenter.org, and the information's there, and make plans to join us for our last installment of Severe Weather Wednesdays. And thank you so much for coming to Little Rock.